Coming up on AVANT, Technology Insights with Ken Presti.
During the course of installing the tax software, a secondary payload is part of the installation and running and opening up a complete backdoor to the customer's environment.
What happens when your company wants to do business in a foreign country, is forced to use a specific tax software, and later learns that that tax software carries a secondary payload that basically gives someone in that country the keys to your network and intellectual property? As the year 2020 continues to blow the doors off anything that even resembles normalcy, this might become the next big thing. Welcome to AVANT Technology Insights. I'm your host, Ken Presti, Research Vice President of AVANT Research and Analytics. The link between solving business challenges and cutting-edge technologies has become tighter and more complex than ever before. In this podcast series from AVANT Research and Analytics, we help enterprise decision makers sort through the business case, the value, the challenges, and ultimately the bottom line of technology adoption. So listen to us at your desktop, take us in the car, tune in from the commuter train, or download us at the gate. You'll find us on Apple, Spotify, and Google, as well as at www.goavant.net/podcast. My guest today is a longtime veteran of networking and IT security, supporting technology partners and channel partners on behalf of TrustWave, a prominent cybersecurity and managed security services provider. The company has a security team of more than 250 researchers, ethical hackers, and incident responders, and boy, did they just catch a big piece of malware. I want to welcome to the program TrustWave's Director of Strategic Partner Sales Engineering, Steve Pierce. Steve, I understand your team was doing some proactive threat hunting for a large client and found an application called Iceno Intelligent Tax Software that your client was mandated to use in order to do business in China that also happened to carry some really insidious malware. How about if you pick up the story from here?
As part of that service, we do what we call continuous threat hunts. It's an exercise where we take a look at the alerts and the logs that have been generated over time and put a human element to it. We actually go through some of that information, looking for things that possibly automation may have missed. And during the course of this exercise with this customer, we discovered some suspicious activity. This is a software company that does business throughout the globe, and they had recently started business in China. And we noticed some unusual call-outs to Chinese domains. And when we asked the customer about it, they said, no, that's no problem. That's tax software that we were told to install as part of doing business in China. It was supplied to us by the state bank. That's normal. Don't worry about it. As we went through, though, we didn't really take that for an answer, and I'm glad we didn't, and did further research and discovered that, yes, in fact, there is tax software, and the tax software is working properly. But during the course of installing the tax software, a secondary payload is part of the installation and running and opening up a complete backdoor to the customer's environment.
Okay, so you guys are calling it Golden Spy at this point, I believe. Tell me a little bit about what it does and how it works.
Yeah, there's some things that are really interesting about this particular malware. So, as I said, when it's installed, it's actually part of a tax software. So it's called Intelligent Tax Software. And the software is installed, and then tax software runs just fine. Everything operates just fine. But what we find, though, is 2 hours after the initial install, this Golden Spy kicks in and installs itself. It's a great way to not be noticed by the end user because it's doing it in a staggered way. So 2 hours afterwards, it's downloaded and installed. Once it's installed, what's interesting is it installs two identical versions of itself. And both of them are persistent auto start services. So they survive reboots. And it's part of what we call a triple layer protection, right? So not only is there are two versions of itself with persistent auto start, but they each monitor the other service. So if one of the services stops running, the remaining service will respawn its counterpart, right? It's extremely sticky. And it also has a separate exe protector module that monitors for the deletion of either of the pieces of software. And if it's deleted, it will download and execute a new version. So it's incredibly persistent, and you don't get much more persistent than that.
Right.
A couple of other things that's interesting is within the intelligent tax software, there is an uninstall feature. And when you run the uninstall, it will uninstall the tax software, but Golden Spy stays behind. So you don't know it's running. You don't know that there's a backdoor into the environment. You think everything is fine.
Okay, so you've got it on your machine or your machines in most cases, I would think. And, regardless of what you're doing with the tax software, you've got this thing running in the background. What is it looking for? What is it trying to extract? I also understand it's also functioning as kind of a Trojan and a dropper as well. So there's a lot of things that can come through it, despite, whatever this one piece of malware in particular might do.
Yeah, what's really interesting is it has system level privilege, so it can basically do anything it wants. Once it's active, it'll start beaconing out to a command and control server, and from that point on, there's really anything that's possible that a adversary would want to do. In the course of our investigation, we didn't necessarily wait to see what happened when we caught it. We tried to stop it right away. And working with some of our technology partners, we're hoping to learn more about what the true intent is. With our experience with other types of adversaries in this type of persistent software, it typically resembles nation state activity where they're looking for intellectual property. That's our best guess. We're trying not to jump to conclusions, but we think that's what's happening.
Now, when you were looking at this client, was there anything in particular that had already been extracted from your client, or was it at that point just the opportunity to extract?
It was fortuitous. We had started the continuous threat hunt pretty soon after this had been installed. I believe it was within a month's worth of time. So, we don't know how long that the software might sit there before it's activated. We also don't know, quite honestly, if this is something that the software manufacturer embeds purposefully, or if this is something that perhaps the software vendor knows nothing about and hasn't been installed or hijacked by someone else to install it. As part of our investigation, we reached out to the software manufacturer. We did not get a response, but we were trying to understand if they even knew about the situation.
Now, I understand the file names are designed to make it look like some sort of an update utility, and then you've noticed that the tax software itself was already designed with those capabilities, so that wouldn't be necessary because that function was already there. Is that true? How did you stumble upon that?
Yeah, so as we looked through how it worked, they had a couple of unique names. They had plugin exe and SVM exe, and those types of modules would reach out over certain ports and using certain domain names to download more software. So that's just part of what TrustWave Spider Labs team does is once they grab the software and install it, they're able to reverse engineer it and take a look at all the different communications and methods that it's using.
Okay, so do you have any sense at all for what the level of deployment would be? How widely deployed this could be? It sounds like are there particular verticals that are limited to this particular tax software, or is it anybody that does business in China who probably already has it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we don't know for sure. Uh, Ideally, we'd like to have done more research before we published this, but we wanted to make sure customers knew or organizations knew that this was out there. Um, the customer that we found this on was a software company. They were doing business globally in many countries. We also know of this being run with a financial institution. And today we were contacted by a hospitality company and several other types of verticals. So it doesn't seem that it's actually targeted at a particular vertical. Um, what we think, or what we are telling customers is, if you're running this I see no intelligent tax software, you should definitely consider it as a threat. You should take a look at our recommendations for how to fix this. You can contact us. We've created an email that goes straight to our threat researchers. It doesn't go to our sales team. It goes to our
Mhm.
threat researchers at goldenspy@trustwave.com, and we've received several notifications today. Uh, the software can move laterally. I mean, it has the ability because it has remote control. Now, we haven't seen that yet, but it is possible. Um, Anytime you're doing business in China, you should be concerned. But this one in particular, I think a lot of people need to take a look and see if this is running in their environment.
Say the name of the tax software again, please.
It's Aisino, AISINO, intelligent tax software. We've actually created a Golden Spy technical report. It's about 30 pages long that we've put on the TrustWave homepage. Very detailed information of what we found, how we found it, and then, like I said before, steps to take to protect yourself.
So one of the things that I found the most sinister about it is that also opens doors. I mean, regardless of what the capabilities of this specific software might be, it can open the door for other things as well. What are the likelihoods? What is the likelihood, would you say, that this thing could proverbially jump the fence and get into the networks of people who may not be working with China themselves, but may do business with other companies that are working with China?
Yeah, that's a big concern, right? So once it's downloaded and running, we haven't seen it spawn itself to then start installing other pieces of itself in other machines. It's not to say it doesn't happen. We haven't seen that yet. I think what's a bigger concern is because it has complete access to the system, it can start downloading other binaries. So maybe you could start downloading malware that's very effective at moving laterally, because now all of a sudden you've penetrated the front door, if you will, and so now other things can take place. So definitely need to have precautions. Definitely need to understand if the indicators of compromise that we've published are things that you see running in your environment.
Did you find any indications of its existence during as you were testing? I mean, is there any kind of, for lack of a better term, symptomology that people should look out for in terms of behavior? So even if if you're using this, or it could be a situation where you work in a partnership with somebody who does. Anything in particular that people could look out for that could say, "Hey, I may be infected."
Yeah, it used particular ports. The ports, I believe it was 9005, 9006. You'd have to look at the report for sure to see. That was a red flag. Communications to a particular domain that is separate from the tax software. So the Golden Spy software in and of itself never reaches back to the publisher of the software. It actually reaches out to a different domain name. So if you see any traffic that's going to that domain name, that appears to be malicious and that should be blocked. Um, One of the things that I thought was most interesting about this is we talk a lot about malware and how malware infects the machine, right? There's a multiple stage process before you actually finally retrieve the data off of a machine. The first part is actually the infection. And a lot of bad guys spend considerable amount of time thinking about how to infect a machine. Do I have something bad on a USB stick that I leave out in a parking lot and someone installs it? Or do I use a phishing attack, right? Send somebody a malicious link, and then when they click on it, it downloads malware to the machine. What's so brazen about this potential attack is it's not hidden. It's basically someone telling you as an organization, you must install this software to do business in China. So they get around all the social engineering and trickery, and it's just embedded in a piece of what looks like perfectly fine software.
hmm So, with that in mind, what precautions do you think people should take in general when doing business outside the United States? Or maybe I'm even giving the United States too much benefit of the doubt. I suppose this sort of thing could happen in the US as well. What would you recommend from a precautionary standpoint?
Yeah, so one of the things I think this really highlights is the human element of cybersecurity. So as part of a managed detection and response complete customer, we were leveraging one of the latest and greatest EDR technologies that was on all the endpoints in this organization's environment. And it didn't stop it, right? We don't believe, based on what we found, that any of the leading vendors we support would have stopped it either, because it has such a random way of reaching out to resources, of its ability to pause and wait. It's something that we don't believe artificial intelligence would have necessarily seen. So I think one of the things that organizations have to remember, and it's tough as a technical person, this is even tough for me, is that security isn't just a technology problem, right? It's not just, you just can't buy a piece of software, install it and set it and forget it and think you're done. You really need either someone within your own organization who's taking a look at the logs and alerts and making informed decisions and asking hypotheticals. Why am I seeing this? This looks a little unusual. Or they need to be working with a managed service provider or MDR partner who offers this type of threat hunting either on a occasional or continual basis. It's so important because these types of things are getting trickier and trickier to understand. And we at TrustWave love automation and we love the partnerships we have. They're getting smarter and smarter. They give us highly actionable alerts so we can investigate even faster, but there still is the necessary human element. So I guess my advice to organizations is just make sure that whether you're getting it from an outside party or you have the people in-house, that they're able to have the time and attention and the skills to take a look at what the technology is providing to you.
Yeah, and that's getting harder and harder to do as time goes on because there's there are a lot more wrecks in the security space than there are people to fill them these days, and
Hmm.
the costs go up considerably. So it really plays to the role of the trusted advisor and by extension, oftentimes the MSSP that may be working with them.
Right.
Any particular thoughts to the enterprise decision maker as they map this sort of thing out? What do they need to suss out in choosing the right trusted advisor to get the job done at this level, especially in something as for I'm going to come out and say it as sinister as this. I mean, this is amazing stuff, so it's not something that everybody would find. How do you exactly find the right type of partner that can even help to protect you against threats like this?
Yeah, I think this is very difficult, right? I really feel for enterprises that have them that are in this situation. A couple things. One is it's a little bit of what I've stated before. When you take a look at cybersecurity, don't just take a look at technology. It's kind of an old adage. It's a people, process, and technology, but it's really true. You can't spend your entire budget just on technology, just like you can't spend your entire budget just on people. It's a blend, right? So you have to take a look at the skills that you have in your organization. And if you're going to invest in tech, then is your team prepared to manage it effectively? These types of tools, not only do you have to install it properly, but you have to baseline. If you do undergo a merger and acquisition, if you undergo a new site install in a new country, the baseline moves, right? So it takes constant tuning to make sure that you're getting the right types of alerts. So do you have that skill set in house or do you need to look elsewhere? And then if you decide to look elsewhere, if you look for support from someone, you really have to question what are you paying for? So in the environments today, you have technology vendors who are offering managed service. You have traditional managed service providers who are trying to become more detection and response driven. And then you've got some people who say that they're pure play MDR, right? And they're all a little bit different flavors, but the ones that are vendor only, they may offer a level of managed detection and response that doesn't have that human element. So that would be one of the questions I would ask is what do I get with the service? Are you just giving me alerts or are you actually fixing things? Here at TrustWave, I joke all the time that they really shouldn't call it MDR service. There should be an MDG service for managed detection and guidance versus managed detection and response, because response to some people just means I'm going to tell you what's wrong and you still have to go fix it, Mr. Customer. So it really takes a look at it's your risk profile. Where are you doing business? Where are your crown jewels? Let's protect that environment very quickly. Let's make sure we get all the alerts possible in that area, and let's start there. And then as that gets settled, then you could extend that same security elsewhere in the organization.
Yeah, those are all very good points because I think a lot of people have a tendency to kind of homogenize this whole thing and they think, okay, I've got I've got some sort of organization that is going to help me with this, but they don't necessarily drill down into what they've got, what they can provide, and what partners are at their disposal in the event that something does go wrong that transcends what they immediately do.
Hmm.
So that's great advice. Remind me again, Steve, where I can get that report, the TrustWave report that you mentioned a moment ago.
Yeah, so on the trustwave.com is our website. We have a blog, and on the blog post, we have a detailed explanation of what we found. There's actually a video there as well that describes at a high level what was happening, and then there's a very detailed research report.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was reading that this morning. The blog was pretty detailed itself, and then you can download the report and you can really nerd out on this stuff. So a lot of great information there. If you are a technologist dyed in the wool, it's definitely something you want to hear about and know about and be able to protect yourself against. So Steve Pierce, Director of Strategic Partner Sales Engineering at TrustWave, thank you very much for being our guest today. Pleasure talking to you, my friend.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
You've been listening to Avant Technology Insights, featuring information and opinions on how key technologies can be leveraged to solve business problems. Avant Technology Insights is a service of Avant Communications, a platform for IT decision-making. All opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the guests and the host. For more information, please feel free to download our research reports and other resources at www.goavant.net. That's www.goavant, as in victory, ant.net. For Avant Research and Analytics, this is Ken Presti.